You are the problem in American politics today. There is something that is deeply and fundamentally broken about you as a man, as a person, that is rotting the inside of the country. At some point, we'll grapple with that, or the country will collapse. So we'll see what happens in 3 years, I guess.
Thank you for illustrating the point on civility.
Are now below $2.30 in most states. That's objectively not true. In fact, according to AAA, there's not a single state where the average gas price is below $2.30, and the real average nationwide is $2.97. Trump also said that he's brought $18 trillion in investment into the country. Not sure where he got that one, but even his own White House's rosy projections and claims only claim $9 trillion brought in investment. And that's if we take those claims at face value from the White House, which we should. Trump also said that the man who killed a Ukrainian refugee in North Carolina entered the country through open borders, but he was actually an American citizen. You get the idea. These are just a few examples, but frankly, the fact checkers have had to work overtime after the deluge of falsehoods and incorrect statements in the president's speech. Yes, politicians' speeches are always full of false claims and spin, but Trump really does do a lot more of this than most other politicians, and frankly, I will always find it kind of insulting the way he seems to have normalized just looking us in the eye and insisting to things that are not true. But Trump also pulled something of a political masterclass when he challenged the Democrats and asked them to rise and applaud if they agreed with his statement that the government's job is to protect American citizens, not illegal immigrants. And then somehow they thought this was a good idea. They all sat silently down.
I'm inviting every legislator to join with my administration in reaffirming a fundamental principle. If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
There's your next Republican campaign ad. And frankly, normal Americans are going to see that clip and reach the same conclusion that President Trump did when he said, these people are crazy. As is the case with most State of the Union addresses, the whole thing was basically political theater. And I honestly think we should go back to the pre-1913 tradition where they just sent a letter to Congress and didn't do a whole speech. The night served to probably change zero Americans' minds about the trajectory of the country and isn't going to materially affect even a single citizen's conditions. But it did provide fodder for attack ads and get us once again all at each other's throats. Other than that, it was really a wonderful evening. That's just my take, and the debate is only just beginning.
All right, joining me now, we've got conservative talk radio host Ari Hoffman and Stephen Bunnell, aka Destiny. Guys, thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So, Stephen, I'll come to you first. I imagine that there's part of that you agreed with, but part of it you probably didn't agree with. Just give me your big picture thoughts on Trump's address. I'm sure you watched it.
It's very difficult to do this, but I mean, looking at where we're at right now politically in the United States, I think one point you brought up, we've just kind of normalized having our government lying to us in the most ridiculous ways possible, even if it's a thing that they are seeing some success on. Like, are we really to believe that zero illegal people made it into this country over the entire, what was it? He said the last 10 months, actually, like zero people. Just the idea that he can just say whatever, and then the fact that he has these same, rehearsed talking points that he uses over and over again. This country used to be dead, and now it's the hottest place in the world, and, blaming Biden for the things that he inherited that he doesn't like, and then taking credit for the things that are going well, like the stock market. I don't know. I'm very tired listening to Trump and then listening to the ways that people around him try to defend every lie or crazy thing that he says by saying it's all a joke or it's all ironic until it's not, and then they defend the thing anyway. And to the larger point, you mentioned something about how, wow, it was crazy that Democrats didn't stand up when Donald Trump said that the government's job should be protecting American citizens. I think I would feel pretty disgusting if I had to stand, or if I watched a Democrat stand up for that when the president sent ICE to Minnesota, murdered 2 American citizens, and then basically shielded those officers from any and all liability and shipped them off somewhere else. I'm just saying, in terms of if that's the government's job to protect American citizens, it doesn't seem like it's playing out very well right now in front of the American people.
Yeah, let's come back to that second point, obviously, about the Democrats, and just kind of start with the big picture message from Trump. I certainly agree with you. I find it frustrating how he says so many things that simply aren't so. But Ari, I saw that you shared some posts, and I think it was a New York Post article or something, calling it maybe the best ever or a really good State of the Union. Make your case for why you liked what you heard.
I always love the State of the Union. I don't care which party's president is giving the State of the Union. I love the theater. Maybe that's because I'm a drama kid, but either way, I love it. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's very entertaining, but you also get to see what the messaging is of the party that's in power or who's in the White House. And I think what this was for the Trump administration was a reset. Hey, remember all that stuff we promised during the campaign? Here's what we delivered on. Here's what we're working on. And here's why you voted for us in the first place. Trying to keep that message going with so many attacks on it, sometimes it's hard to have that megaphone. Now, that actually gives some credence to your argument that we should abolish the whole thing, because why do taxpayers need to pay for a giant campaign commercial? I find it fun. I find it entertaining. And it's the one time a year I think C-SPAN is actually fun to watch. I like when you see the different camera angles of who's reacting, but also I think it also shows how civility is completely out the window. Do you remember a few years ago when Barack Obama was giving the State of the Union address and Senator Joe Wilson stood up and called him a liar? He had to apologize, and there was huge public pressure on him for saying that. And ever since then, it's been going downhill, downhill, downhill. You had Marjorie Taylor Greene yelling at Joe Biden. Now, last night, you had Rashida Tlaib chanting KKK while the U.S. hockey team is in the room and everybody's chanting USA, USA, USA. I mean, we're looking at the both extremes of our political parties on display in the room. And I think as much as I love the speech, and as much as it seems like 63% of Americans, according to CNN, approved of the speech, I think what we're seeing is, as opposed to uniting, we're seeing our country become more and more divided. And I'm not sure how you really fix that, but I don't think it's divided between Democrats and Republicans.
But Ari, can you, when we're talking about civility or division, I feel like we can't really talk about that without at least acknowledging a large portion of that Donald Trump has spearheaded the decline of, no? Would you acknowledge that?
I don't agree that that's where it started. I think it started with Barack Obama trying to save his second term and cobbling together this whole different groups of different people and telling them, here's who to blame, here's who to blame, here's who to blame, here's who to blame, and attacking everybody under the sun. I think that's where it really started. And I think Trump came along and said, well, if this is the game we're going to play, then I'm going to play it, and I'm going to play it better. I'm not saying he's free of blame at all. I just think he's better at it. And when you look at the civility, the point I was about to make was, I think last night when you saw who stood up for what, and you see that the Democrats couldn't stand up for anything, even common sense, what you're seeing is there's a real disconnect between the Democrat Party and the average American. I think really what you saw on display last night was common sense and the far left insanity that has taken over the Democrat Party.
Well, all right. So, Stephen, I'll come to you on this question of the civility and decline. I have a feeling you have a slightly different view.
I'm sorry. Can I just get a refresher on the what was that Obama reference?
Which one are we talking about?
Obama was telling us to blame all these groups of people. What are we referring to there?
Back in 2012, when Barack Obama was having real trouble after passing Obamacare, what he did was he took a whole bunch of different disaffected groups. Let's not forget, it was Barack Obama who was pushing all the Black Lives Matter narrative heading into right after his reelect. In addition to that, this is stuff that he's been leaning on. Anytime there was something with race, he doubled down on the wrong side of it, took the wrong side of it every single time.
Okay, I'm not hearing anything. I'm just trying to, what was the, like, what did he say?
You want to talk about Michael Brown, you want to talk about George Zimmerman, you want to talk about him supporting Black Lives Matter, the organization that also had anti-Semitic undertones. Where do you want to start with that?
Because so in terms of anti-Semitic undertones, I'm pretty sure that Donald Trump literally sat with Fuentes for, I think it was in Mar-a-Lago, to have dinner, let alone all of the other insane associations with him. Elon Musk is a white identitarian neo-Nazi machine on X, and he had a prominent role in the White House that was, by the way, a monumentally epic failure. Doge, which was a thing that was promised to us that was over the last year. I noticed that Donald Trump didn't say anything about that. He talked about putting together a new fraud team that was supposed to be headed by J.D. Vance. I don't know why we would have any faith in that when Doge was probably the biggest failure I've ever seen of a government anything initiative in the past 20, 30 years that I've known of. The idea that the president of the United States, Barack Obama, giving his opinion on some things in what was generally a very reserved way, and to say that that is what started things, and then compare that to Trump, who nicknames derisively every political opponent he has, is just absolute insanity to me. But I mean, it's in line with the current conservative thought of trying to blame literally anybody but themselves when the current political environment is just absolutely all of them. Yeah.
Funded terrorist organizations like funding Iran, gave money back to the Palestinian Authority so they could continue their pay-for-slay program. And you're going to lecture me about Donald Trump, who's solving peace in the Middle East right now. You're going to call him an anti-Semite, especially
just curious.
Grandkids?
Yeah, sorry, the Middle East isn't my strong point here. How many times are we going to get peace of the Middle East? Because I was told that the Abraham Accords were peace of the Middle East, and then the October 7th attacks happened, and then I was told that we just had peace in the Middle East again after the first Iran bombing, or after the Hamas thing, but then we bombed Iran, and then I was told that peace in the Middle East was there, but now we're about to go to war with Iran. I'm just curious, when are we going to have the final peace in the Middle East, or is it always like a transient 1 to 2 year thing?
Sorry, guys. We're not going to go down the Middle East rabbit hole. I think we could do, a 2-hour podcast on that and only scratch the surface. I also think we're probably not going to solve the great debate over the collapse of American civility. But I do wonder, let's talk about this second question, right? To
well,
me,
just as a quick thing, I'm sorry, because I didn't answer the question. If you look at the 4 years of Biden and you look at the prior 4 years of Trump, or even the first year of Trump here, and you're trying to pretend that there is even remotely the same level of civility shown, you are the problem in American politics today. Like, there is something that is deeply and fundamentally broken about you as a man, as a person, that is rotting the inside of the country. And at some point, we'll grapple with that, or the country will collapse. So we'll see what happens in 3 years, I guess.
Thank you for illustrating the point on civility when you say there's something fundamentally wrong with me.
Yeah, let's not go there. Let's not go there.
I stand by my comments. It is absolutely true. To compare Biden, who said he wanted to be a president for all Americans, who increased the Secret Service allotment to President Trump, or to Trump while he was running for president, as Donald Trump strips Secret Service protections away from people he doesn't like, as he targets law firms he doesn't like, as he gives nicknames to people he doesn't like, who can't even condemn violence across all sides after the Charlie Kirk assassination, but instead says that violence on the left is disorderly and terrible, but violence on the right is in response to that. It's unbelievable.
Assassination after the Democrats were saying, well, he said some really bad things. I'm sorry he got shot, but he kind of deserved it. After the entire
which Democratic leader said that? Which Democratic leader said that? Which Democratic leader said that? The entire left. So it should be really easy to name a single Democratic leader.
Okay, guys, I'm going to reel us back in here. I'm
Okay.
going to reel us back in here. I think we'll leave it there for that. I get your
Let
point.
the record show that he had no response to that, but okay, go ahead.
I think if I was going to talk about the State of the Union and say one unifying moment, was actually both sides did stand and applaud when Trump condemned political violence and the shooting of Charlie Kirk. And I did appreciate that, though we can obviously talk about the broader way that was handled, and it was far from ideal. On this specific point, though, Stephen, I have to say, I am very critical of Trump's handling of immigration. I think obviously he's overcorrecting from the Biden policies, which were, their own problem in a lot of ways. But this moment where he says, please clap and stand with me if you agree that we need to put the safety of Americans before illegal immigrants. And then you have the Democrats sitting on their hands silently. I mean, what are they thinking doing that? And how is that not like the perfect wet dream of every Republican political operative for the next 10 million attack ads? I think that's going to land with
Because
people.
Donald Trump has used this excuse of illegal immigrants to attack American citizens. We've got now hearings where judges are have issued release orders for American citizens that have been illegally detained by ICE who aren't being released weeks sometimes after. Sometimes they're already shipped out of the country. You have the whole Alex Petty thing. You've got the Renee Good thing. Regardless of whether or not you think it was a justified or unjustified killing in both those instances, that's federal troops going to, or federal officers going to a state and killing American citizens. The idea that you're going to talk about illegal immigration and how we should protect Americans over illegal immigrants, but you've used that same talking point to what seems to be bring harm to American citizens, it rings hollow. And I wouldn't stand for it either.
Why can't Ari? I'll come to you in 1 sec. Ari, I'll come to you in 1 sec. But it's like, my perspective is that Democrats need to seize the high ground and say, we agree we need to protect Americans over illegal immigrants, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And we think Trump's doing the wrong way, and then outline their own vision. But it feels like you're just giving a gift to Trump when you sit on your hands. They got up to applaud for banning congressional stock trading, which I don't care too much about one way or the other. But it's like, if you're going to get up and applaud for that, but then not for the basic statement of protect Americans before illegal immigrants, it just feels like an own goal to me, Stephen.
I mean, you can view it that way, but I mean, if you've seen the president utilize that same rhetoric to attack American citizens, I don't know why you would support him when he says it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. We need to do something about protecting American citizens over illegals, and then we've seen how that's played out now in a historically horrendous fashion. Why would you stand by this guy and support him when he says, those empty words?
Ari, your take.
Because of somebody like Washington State Trooper Christopher Gadd, who was killed by an illegal alien who was driving drunk in the middle of the night at 104 miles an hour on a freeway. And because of Laken Riley, and because of all the other Americans who were killed by illegal aliens. And yet the left doesn't want to acknowledge that at all. The left doesn't want to acknowledge that ever happens. Instead, they just want to not stand for protecting Americans. It seems like the left has no problem with this whatsoever. And if you don't want to get killed by a federal agent, you shouldn't start attacking federal agents. And the left shouldn't be weaponizing kids and sending them out into the streets, like here in Washington State, here in the Seattle area, to go after federal agents or police officers for that matter, because this is nothing new. This is something that's been happening since 2016 out here in Seattle. This is an ongoing problem where the left doesn't like law enforcement, where the left doesn't stand for Americans because they would rather stand for illegal aliens. This is what they are about. And I have never heard anybody on the left talk about any of the people who were killed by illegal aliens. I've never heard them talk about the angel families. It seems like the left's perspective is, well, we want a whole bunch of people coming into this country, and we want open borders, and we want them to keep voting for us, and we have no problem with the issues that are happening here with the mail-in ballot system, where we have multiple documented, recorded cases of them voting, and nobody doing anything about it whatsoever. They said, well, you know what? If we want to keep this to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. I haven't heard any of them talk about that at all.
You're casting Ari. So Stephen, I'll let you respond in one sec. But when you say the left, you are casting with a very broad brush there, and you even had some Democratic members of Congress who voted for the Laken-Riley Act. For example, I think John Fetterman voted for it. So I mean, you surely would acknowledge that not all Democrats are open borders lunatics. No.
I would say that John Fetterman isn't. I'd say you have a hard time naming any others that aren't. Because John Fetterman disagrees with the Republican Party, 80, 90% of the time? But I saw him stand up on some common sense issues last night when nobody else did. I've seen him say, hey, guys, we're looking like idiots. John Fetterman acknowledged the fact that, yes, they did give campaign fodder to Republicans for the next cycle and possibly the one after that by not standing up for common sense things. When you have Rashida Tlaib chanting KKK instead of USA, when the U.S. hockey team comes into the room, in one of the rare bipartisan moments when most people were actually standing, now you've just killed the fact that the left was standing for Team USA. And this kind of shenanigans didn't play well with the paddles during Netanyahu or any other, or with Donald Trump with people wearing white. It doesn't play. It just looks petty to most Americans.
Yeah, Stephen, your thoughts on that?
I don't even, this isn't even like real politics. I don't know what the conservatives are doing. First of all, to his credit, it is really hard for conservatives to imagine Democrats not being lockstep on things because they are literally part of the Trump Borg mind. So I don't think they can even fathom having a disagreement in party because Trump will excise that person from the party immediately if he even detects any type of insubordination whatsoever. First off. Second off, nobody loves dead Americans to illegal immigrants more than conservatives. And you can tell this because, and I made this prediction a year and a half ago, and it will come true by the end, there will be no comprehensive legislation done whatsoever to approach or address any of the issues related to the border or illegal immigrants in this country. Donald Trump is doing a big show of force right here for the first year. I called it a year ago. Anybody that was intelligent could have called it. Nothing will happen. Nothing will change. We're going to go to the end of his term. There will be no legislation addressing the backlog of asylum seekers, addressing the shortage of funding or staffing for crucial immigration-related things that would help us cut down on the amount of illegals in this country, because all of it is a horse and pony show for conservatives that like to drag out the same two corpses over and over and over again whenever they want to virtue signal on the issue and then do absolutely nothing about it, which is basically the conservative MO for everything, whether we're talking Doge or no new wars or 90 deals in 90 days or whatever. Every single thing is a lie. Every single thing is a virtue signal. Progress is non-existent on any of these issues. I don't even know how a conservative takes themselves seriously when they're talking about any of these problems whatsoever. You would acknowledge that if we get no legislation or no reform or anything of the immigration system in the next 3 years, because Donald Trump killed the bill, he killed the Langford bill that was actually going to take a good approach to our asylum system and increase the amount of judges available, increase the funding for border security, increase the funding for judges to go through the backlog.
He did do that.
Yep, and that got shot down explicitly because Trump said he wanted to keep it open as an election issue. Ted Cruz said it himself on the floor. That's not coming. We're not getting any legislation. We're not going to deport the 30 million illegals. Is this not a monumental failure?
What do you need the legislation for when we've sealed the border without spending any more money? The legislation that Stephen wants is the one that grants asylum to 11 million illegal aliens minimum that came here during the Biden administration. The Democrats have said as much themselves. And I'll say something else is that when the Democrats had control of stuff, I didn't see them passing any rules. The truth is neither party wants to solve this. And why does neither party want to solve it? The same reason they don't want to solve Social Security, the same reason they don't want to solve Medicaid, because the second you solve it, it's nobody's campaign issue. And I think the problem is that Stephen and I aren't living in two different worlds. Stephen wants the left to use it for their purposes. I may want the right to use it for our purposes. And unfortunately, we don't have anybody who's common sense getting in a room and saying, okay, you want to solve border immigration? Then how about something like this? How about we say, all right, if you never committed a crime and you've never been on any form of welfare whatsoever, but you came across the border illegally, maybe we can find a path to citizenship. But anybody who commits a serious felony against this country, or who is living off welfare and came to this country just to get the welfare, maybe we don't grant it to you. And maybe we could get in a room and have that discussion. But from what Stephen's saying, it sounds like he has such hatred for anybody who supports Donald Trump or anybody who's a Republican, he'd never even want to have that conversation with somebody like me.
I think a lot of Republicans would revolt at that idea, though, of amnesty for anyone. So I'm not sure that's even a viable proposition. What you're describing is my position and has been for 10 years of a middle ground solution.
This is the position that conservatives will assume as a mask whenever they're confronted with somebody who actually wants to talk about immigration, which conservatives are not prepared to talk about, because you'll say all of this now, and I'm curious, if I go through your broadcast or your social media feed, am I going to see you expressing extreme disdain for Donald Trump attacking DACA? Because DACA is basically exactly what you're describing. It's a program that monitors people in the United States that have no criminals.
And hear how often we criticize Donald Trump on my show. In fact, we have an entire segment called When the Right Gets It Wrong. So making assumptions about a show that you've never listened to in writing that you've never read is quite an assumption. All I hear from you
It's very interesting that you just wait, hold on. Let me just clarify. Yeah, let me just clarify. Wait, no, hold on, because you didn't respond to what I asked. Did you attack Donald Trump for attacking DACA?
All you've been doing.
He's not going to answer. He's just crying.
Because I support Donald Trump.
This is Trump derangement syndrome right here.
Because I'm a Republican.
It's actual grown children.
Drone.
He can't.
Because I support Donald Trump.
I think he's broken right now.
Didn't you say?
Is there like a reset button on the back of his neck or something? Can we? Okay, wait. Did you criticize Donald Trump for attacking DACA?
That's a valid question, Ari. What have you said over Trump being against DACA?
I don't support the DACA program.
There it is. Do you see how I accurately called out the filibuster? Do you see how I knew? Do you see how I incepted? Do you see how simple the conservative MAGA brain is? Do you see how easy that was to call? I'm good on that one. Go. What's the next question?
If somebody is 9 months pregnant, flies into France, does their kid get to become a citizen?
Well, birthright
I don't know, and I don't care. I'm not French. I'm sorry. Hold on. Which French laws do you want to copy right now? What else do you want?
No, I'm giving an example of a random country. Why is it the United States of America has to do something that no other country does?
Like our freedom of speech? Like our Second Amendment? What else do you want to get rid of in the United States that doesn't match up with European countries? Please let me know. Give me the list.
That's the one. Okay, that's what the direction you want to go down. You want to talk about DACA? Let's talk about DACA.
Okay.
I don't think that just because you are here in this country with a parent who has no connection to this country whatsoever and you're born into this country, we should necessarily do it. However, that's not a decision for you or me to make. That is something the courts can make. And if
that's
Donald
great.
Trump wants to attack it,
that's a great, and that's great. It's great that you have that opinion, and that's fine, but I wish you would have just said that before rather than all this blah, blah, blah about, well, maybe if you've been here and you haven't committed any felonies and you're not on welfare, because clearly that was all BS. I wish you would start with the position you honestly hold right now. Now, you made this complaint that we can't have a conversation about immigration, and I agree we can't, but it's because of people like you. You wouldn't give your honest opinion initially.
Guys, all right.
The Borg drone, right, people like me. I see why civility's out the window now.
Let's move to this next part here from the actual State of the Union, because I don't know that we're going to solve the DACA debate or litigate all of France's policies. But the actual moment here where Trump referenced transgender children being transitioned or socially transitioned in schools without the knowledge of their parents in some blue states, and then Democrats responded in a similar fashion. Let's watch this. I'll play the clip here.
But surely we can all agree no state can be allowed to rip children from their parents' arms and transition them to a new gender against the parents' will. Who would believe that we've been talking about this? We must ban it, and we must ban it immediately. Look, nobody stands up. These people are crazy. I'm telling you, they're crazy. Amazing, Governor. Boy, oh boy. We're lucky we have a country. With people like this, Democrats are destroying our country, but we've stopped it just in the nick of time, didn't we?
All right, so mixed thoughts on that, because he's definitely not accurately describing the situation in these different areas where some of these policies are in place. Forcibly confiscating people's children and transitioning them against their will isn't really what we're talking about, but obviously there is this ongoing battle over whether kids should be allowed to do these irreversible medical transitions that I think most people find really insane and objectionable. And then there are these states like California and New York where they even have these policies statewide where you're not even allowed to require teachers to notify parents if a child starts socially transitioning in school or going by different pronouns. So, I mean, this struck me as a moment where they're totally talking past each other. I don't see how Trump can really complain about civility when he's pointing out the political opposition and calling them crazy. But I guess, Stephen, your thoughts on this. This does seem like an issue where Democrats are going to struggle to appeal to the public if they can't even agree that, like, hey, maybe kids shouldn't be medically transitioning.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little disappointed, given that I feel like he didn't bring up the trans stuff as much as I would have liked, given that we're staring at potential war with Iran, given that we captured the leader of a foreign country, given that he is trying to tariff every country in the world even more than he was before after the courts ruled against him. I wish we would have gotten a little bit more trans stuff. I feel like we were lacking that this time, but I'm glad that he managed to hit those talking points a little bit. I honestly don't care that much. I cannot imagine obsessing over trans people. Every crazy trans person I've ever seen in my life has been somebody that conservatives have dug off of Twitter and decided to platform on their shows to show how crazy it all is. Personally, I think that if you want to talk about whatever trans stuff there is for kids, it should probably be a conversation between a doctor and the child and the parent. And I don't know if the school is involved in that. If you want to talk about school stuff, usually that comes down to school superintendent, local elections, and it should be dealt with there. I don't know what the dealing with at the federal level is. But I know how obsessed Republicans are in getting in between people and their health care, like they are in terms of banning abortion. So I don't know, maybe that's a conservative talking point that they just like to go over a lot.
Yeah, I think the problem is it's a lot of it's not health care. And I think this functions as something of, I agree with you that it's not an issue that's affecting most people's lives, but it's something that many people view as a sanity test. And they're telling me, and when you have a party that stood behind, or a lot of people in the party stood behind 16-year-olds and 15-year-olds getting double mastectomies thousands of times.
I think that this is, I personally, I agree with the late Kirk, that this is kind of an 80-20 issue. I think that the problem is that conservatives just don't think trans people are real at all, which I think is a silly position. But
well, I've always supported, to be clear though, I've always supported trans adults' right to live.
Yeah, but who cares at that point? If you're female to male and they're saying that you can't do anything until you're 18, or I'm sorry, male to female, you might as well, you're fucked at that point anyway. You're never going back.
I don't think that's true.
It is true.
Blair
it's
White
absolutely
transitioned
true.
after 18.
Yeah, but not all of us have $150,000 for facial feminization surgery and soft puberties as whatever. But regardless of the issue with that, this is an issue. I would say that it is a healthcare issue, regardless if you want to view it that way or not. It should probably be a conversation between the parents, the children, and the medical providers. It might be in the future that we decide that all forms of this should be off the table and it's not important. But I mean, like, that's a thing that the medical establishment is slowly figuring out. In the UK, they've rolled back some of their stuff. I think in some recommendations in the US have rolled back stuff. Most people don't support surgeries for adolescents. That's a really extreme position, even among people that support trans people. And just hearing about, medical advice being lectured about that from a side who we have like record numbers of measles outbreaks in the country right now because conservatives don't believe in vaccination anymore. I just can't take that argument very seriously. I'm sorry.
All right, I'll bring in Ari here for your take.
So how is this a federal issue? Senate Bill 5599, which was passed in the Washington State Legislature 2 years ago, allows a child who says, well, my parents don't accept me for how I am, to run away from home, be hidden by the Washington State government, by officials, by the Department of Youth, Children, Family Services, by their schools, never inform their parents of where they are, and then give them an abortion or transition them. It is a law. Right now, 16 states, including Idaho and Florida, are suing and hoping to take this to the Supreme Court to stop it, because what they're worried about, and what we've seen cases of in Idaho, is kids running away from home and ending up wards of Washington State. That's why this is a federal issue. You may not think that this is something that happens a lot, but it is happening way too frequently here in Washington State. I know since the beginning of the year, there's been at least 3 cases where we have seen this exact thing happen. And one of the reasons they're rolling this back across the U.S. is because there was a lawsuit. And the lawsuit was basically saying you guys had no science behind this whatsoever when you guys decide to transition this kid. So then the Plastic Surgeons Association of America says we're not going to do this anymore. Then the American Medical Association says we're not going to do this anymore. And things started changing because it wasn't based on any science. It was based on ideology. This is an 80-20 issue, and you just saw a real-life version of the commercial from the campaign Democrats are for they, them, Trump is for you. That's what he was trying to do in that case there. Is this something that happens frequently? No, of course not. But is something that illustrates the extremism that has overwhelmed the left these days.
Yeah, Stephen, I'll come to you for your response to that. But I do think that is the problem with saying like, oh, it's just a non-issue. It doesn't affect a lot of people. It's a sanity test. You have hundreds of Democratic members of Congress signing amicus briefs to the Supreme Court saying that 12-year-olds should be given puberty blockers. I mean, I think of my mom, who is a life...
Puberty blockers is... Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me flesh this out, right? Like, my mom voted for Kamala. She voted for Obama. She voted for Biden. She's going to vote for the Democrat in 2028. But like, there's this big middle of this country, and she will hear that and think like that's crazy, and the Democrats are out of touch with us normal people. She'll still vote for them, and I think a lot of people will. But it's an isolating issue, Stephen.
Sure. I think that there are aspects of the trans stuff that the Democratic establishment should have pushed back harder on. I don't think it's necessarily the puberty blocker stuff. I think the athletic stuff, I think, was an obvious one for college or Olympic level stuff. I think that was really silly of the Democratic Party. I think that the science is out on or figuring out what the best way to deal with people that are trans, because when you're trans as a minor. You don't just become trans when you are an adult at 18. I think the science is out on that. For regardless of whether or not we want to say it's ideologically informed, there is much more scientific evidence related to puberty blockers for minors than there is that mRNA vaccines cause Jeffrey Epstein's DNA to control your brain, or that the vaccines for measles or whatever, it has dead monkey parts that's going to cause everybody to die. Like, there's way more evidence on the side of the trans stuff than all the insane medical monkey crazy stuff that comes out of the modern day RFK Jr. camp. So I just hearing Republicans talk about...
Isn't that just kind of whataboutism, right? Because like both
it's not whataboutism. It's if you have a problem here that's a massive problem that is going to be a massive detriment to our country. So, for instance, defunding education, defunding labs, defunding certain research. All the mRNA vaccine research was defunded in the United States. If you're defunding all of that, okay, that's fine. But if you're defunding all of that, and we're starting to see measles outbreaks happening at record numbers all across the United States, we're on the verge of losing our status as a measles eliminated country. But you want to talk about, I'm sorry, what was this? 3 kids from Idaho that ran to Washington? The focus makes me question what the actual priorities here. It doesn't seem to be healthcare. It seems to be ideology.
There's thousands of minors who've been affected by some of this stuff. But Stephen, what I would say is there was no RFK Jr. in Trump's first term. The kind of anti-science MAGA extreme wing did not emerge or have any kind of power or cachet in the first Trump administration.
Sure.
The reason it does now, I think in part, is that the scientific establishment and the kind of liberal media consensus and the Democratic Party on COVID, on gender, on other things, you had the top science journals coming out and endorsing political candidates over Trump. They burned their credibility. They made people stop trusting the expert class.
But that's not true. When you say they burn their credibility, why is it that their credibility is damaged because of things that conservatives want to talk about constantly, but the conservative credibility is never damaged? That doesn't make any sense to me. RFK Jr. has made... We just went through a whole 6-month period of believing that Advil causes autism or whatever, right? Where's the credibility hit from that? It's nowhere.
Wasn't it Tylenol?
I don't know, whichever stupid conspiracy or whatever. Maybe I.
But I'm saying that we got there because people became unmoored from trusting experts and from the kind of establishment. And there's a healthy dose of self-reflection about how much arrogance and how much they got wrong that caused that.
I think that that's true. I think that it's good to stop and figure out what did you get wrong on a messaging thing. I think that's always important. Or maybe there's a position that was a little bit out of step. I think that's important to understand. But it's also important to understand Americans were not fixated on trans issues because trans issues were coming up everywhere in their lives. They were fixated on trans issues because conservatives are losers on every single policy ground. So they have to choose the most esoteric world to fight in, which had to do with trans kids. And that's why we're getting posts and blogs about like a woman who wants to make her 4-year-old a fucking trans person who 90% of Democrats are going to be like, this person's fucking crazy.
Democrats also didn't take it off the table the way they could have by
I agree with that. But it was put on the table by Republicans, to be clear, right? Kamala didn't spend any time talking about trans issues when she was running for her 107 days or whatever. It was brought up by conservatives over and over and over and over and over again.
After it had been introduced in policy and in media and in culture over the previous decade. Ari, I want to bring in you here. Give us your thoughts on everything you've just heard.
I'm trying to figure out which part to actually weigh in on. Are we talking about medical science? Are we talking about trans? Are we talking about that? I just come back to my original point. is that when the Democrats are on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue, like transing the kids, then they have a messaging problem. We want to discuss vaccines. You want to discuss this? How about this? During COVID, they kept the schools closed longer here in Washington, and we had a massive learning loss. And there was no excuse for that whatsoever. The science didn't show that at all. And when they could have reopened them, they refused to because the teachers' unions didn't want to go back to work. And it would have been so easy to just say, you know what, we were closed for 2 years. We're going to add an hour to the school day to make it up, or we're going to add extra classes. They didn't do that at all. In fact, they refused to put in any extra time whatsoever. So now we have an entire learning loss. You talk about the economy here in Washington. I keep coming back to Washington because it's what I know best. The amount of businesses that closed because they said, oh, you can't stay open for these hours. You can't have these kind of customers. I had a business that was in the event rental industry, completely destroyed by all this because you couldn't have events for 2 years here in Washington. As you said, the medical community here burned their credibility, especially when they had documents showing that the vaccine was not stopping the spread, but you had governors like Jay Inslee telling everybody that it did, and if you didn't get the vaccine, you were going to kill everybody because you voted for Donald Trump. If you want to talk about the medical community's trustworthiness, it doesn't have any left to burn. So when I see the RFK thing, who I'm not a big fan of at all, when I see all that, I go, can't be any crazier than the stuff we had before, and that's what most Americans look at. Right now,
well, I think it could still be crazier, actually. Like,
what I'm saying right now is, for me, I go, this one's crazy in this one's crazy in this. Why should I listen to any of them right now? As my esteemed colleague said just a few minutes ago, the decision should be between parents, child, doctor. And yet, anytime the government gets involved, whether it's the right or the left, they're using it for political reasons. But I think here there's a messaging issue that's very, very clear that the Democrats are taking the extreme side because they're afraid of their extreme base. And I think that's working in Republicans' favor. I think Donald Trump knew he had a messaging problem, especially with what's going on in Minneapolis. And what he did was try to reset it last night by reminding everybody why so many independents voted for him for the first time, because it looked like to so many of them that the Democrats just went completely off the rails.
Stephen, all right, I'll give you the final thought here.
I don't even know what to say. I mean, it's astounding to me that people will do this thing, like I just heard it, and I know it's a lie, of like, well, I don't know if I could trust either side, but if you look at them publicly, they will spend all of their time defending the dude, blasting TRT and drinking unhomogenized milk or whatever, claiming that it's going to be our gateway to health in the future. Or you look at measles cases springing up across the United States, and then you have these idiots like Joe Rogan that don't know the difference between measles and chicken pox, and then you have people who are crying about the economic harm caused by COVID lockdowns, which people might not have gotten them right, but at least there was a reason for it. I wonder if they make the same complaints about the tariffs that are happening for absolutely no reason, that are hurting basically every single part of our economy. Thankfully, we are buoyed right now by healthcare and AI. But I mean, it's a very deeply unserious political environment with a bunch of deeply unserious people, and hopefully after midterms, when all of these same people pretend that they never liked Trump in the first place, because that will happen, and that will be the position. Well, I was never a big supporter of Trump, and they'll scrub all their old Twitter accounts and everything else. Hopefully we get back to some kind of world where we can have actual conversations about these issues.
All right, guys. Well, we will leave it there. I appreciate both of you for participating in the spirited conversation, and hopefully we won't have to deal with another State of the Union for an entire additional year, because I hate it. Can we agree that it should be abolished? Quick lightning round.
I don't have a strong opinion on it. It's good in theory. I mean, I think it's okay to have it in theory, yeah.
Boo. All right, guys.
I don't think we agree on. It's fun. I like the fun.
Is the fun in the room with us? I missed the fun part last night. I just wanted to scream at my TV, and actually I watched it this morning. I didn't even watch it last night because I need double speed to deal with this shit and skip over the minutes of clapping. But guys, we'll keep. I guess we'll follow with interest whatever comes next. Thanks to both of you for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
But it's just so. I can't talk to any of these people. What are we even talking about, bro?